Okay, so today we're going to be talking about fractional distance, um, and this is a little bit practice. So we talked about the midpoint, right, which is like the halfway point, so one half. We've kind of discussed that, but what happens when the distance is not one half? What if it's more than one half or less than one half? So this is what we're going to discuss today. Okay, so very similar to when we did the fractional distance with this midpoint formula, that's what we're going to do today. So look at this problem. It says Mr. Pokemon is practicing a marathon. He starts jogging at mile marker 243. A friend is going to pick him up at mile marker 255. He wants to take a break two-thirds of the way between the 2 points. Where should he take his break? Well, his starting point is at 243, and his ending point is at 255. We may call this the starting point, the beginning point, right? Or might call this x1. Your ending point, we would call this x2, right? So the total miles that he's jogging, we would just subtract. So 255 minus 243, right? When we do that, we get 12, right? So total miles jogged, he's jogging 12 miles. That's a lot of miles. Okay, so how not far is jogging? Check. Take two-thirds of the distance. So we're going to take 12 and we're going to multiply it by two-thirds, right? Just in case you don't know how to multiply fractions, it's okay. I like to do it this way. So with the fractions, I multiply the 12 times the 2, right? So 12 times 2, and then I divide that by 3, okay? 12 times 2 is 24. 24 divided by 3 equals 8. Okay, so from the starting point, right, we want to add those 8 miles to the starting point. So we started at 243, right? We add 8 to it, and we get 251. So he wants to stop at mile marker 251. Okay, and that's what we how we get the two-thirds result, right? Multiply the total distance by the fraction. Okay, pretty simple, pretty easy process. So let's use the number line below to answer the following questions, right? We have point A, which is at -7, and point Z, which is at 9. What is the distance between A and Z? So remember, your distance is the absolute value of x1 minus x2, right? It's the difference. Let's call this one, right, x1. We'll call this one x2. So absolute value of -7 minus 9, right? -7 minus 9 is going to give me the absolute value of -16, which we know is just positive 16. So there are 16 units between A and Z. Don't trust me? Count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Told you. Okay, and that's just a nice little formula you can use to find your distance between 2 points. So now that we know the total distance from A to Z, which is 16 units, we want to find point B, which is 1/4 of the distance from A to Z. So what is the distance? And then plot point B. So remember, we're going from A to Z. That's very, very important. Okay. So 1/4 the distance from A to Z. So we're going to take that 16, right? And we're going to multiply it by 1/4, basically dividing it by 4, right? So 1/4 the distance from A to Z is 4 units. So we go 4 units from A, right? So our starting point was -7. We add 4 to that, and we're going to get -3. So point B should be plotted at -3 right here. And that is the 1/4 distance from A to B. Okay? That's very important. We understand from A to B, or A to Z. Sorry, my apologies. A to Z. Okay, so be careful with that. Make sure you know what your starting points are. That's very important. Okay, so we have this special formula, kind of like what you've already seen, right? Our fractional distance formula, right? So using the formula, it works well. Just make sure to put your x1 as the beginning point. That's pretty important, right? Beginning point, and x2 as the end point. If you switch them, it will not provide the correct answer. So again, x1 is your beginning point, okay, and x2 is your ending point. Okay. The F stands for your fraction, so that's going to be your fractional distance. And then XP is the final point that you're looking for, right? That's the point that's whatever distance, right? So that's your final point. So I'm going to do that in a different color, if you will. Okay, so that's going to be a tad bit different from what we've been doing as far as it goes in the progress. Okay, so that's going to be like the distance after the fractional distance, right? So FP is where you're where the point is plotted, right? So if we did this, right, using this formula, we would say something like this: x of p, because that's what we're looking for. That was the question here, is equal to x1, which would be a, which is at -7, plus my fractional distance, 1/4, times x2, which is 9, minus x1, which was -7, right? And that's how you would get xp, which is 3. That's a special formula that you can derive from. Okay. Again, you have to make sure that x1 and x2 are labeled as your beginning and end point, and make sure you read the questions very carefully. Okay. And then xp should always be between, right? So this point right here should always be between x1 and x2. If the fraction is less than 1/2, then your answer should be closer to xb, right? Or x1 than x2. If the fraction is greater than 1/2, then your answer should be closer to x2 than it is to x1. Now remember, some people might call this xb and xe for beginning and ending point. So just in case you know, 1 is the beginning, 2 is the ending. That's how it works. Okay. And then, of course, you want to plot the point. Does it look like it where it should be, right? Does it look like it's supposed to be closer to one part than the other? Okay. So now we use this formula so that we can derive a points. Obviously, not all points are on horizontal lines. We talked about this the other day. This point could be on a diagonal line, which we would use both the same formula, but of course we'd have our x's and y's. So you want to do something very important and label your points. Label, label, label. That's going to be super duper important. Label your points, right? So find the 3/4. So this is my F, right? Of the way from point A. So this is x1, y1, and point B, which is x2, y2. Very similar to what we've been doing, distance and slope, right? So my beginning point, right, is going to be for x is going to be -1, right? Okay. -1 comma 5, right? My ending point is going to be 7 comma 1. Okay. All right. And my fraction is 3/4. So x1 is going to be -1 and x2 is going to be 7, right? So we don't know what xp is. We're going to look for that. Equals x1, which is -1, plus my fraction of 3/4 times x2, which is 7, minus x1, which is -1. And then you can change that to a plus if you want to. Okay. And guys, you can actually type this exactly like this in your calculator, and the calculator does all the arithmetic for you. So 7 plus 1, right? Because that's 7 minus -1, that's 8. 8 times 3/4 is going to be 12, I believe. 24 or 6. Sorry. 8 times 3 is 24. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So you have -1 plus 6, which equals 5. And that is what xp is. So we know our point so far is going to be at 5 comma something, right? Now we got to find the y. Okay. Okay. All right. So we do the exact same thing with the y's. Now we're looking at our y's. Our beginning point for y1, is going to be 5. Remember, we're looking at the y's. And our end point is going to be 1. Okay. So We don't know what our YP is. That's what we're going to find out right here. We know Y1 is going to be equal to 5 plus my fraction, which is 3/4, times Y2, which is 1, minus Y1, which is 5. Okay? So this gives me right here negative 4. Negative 4 times 3/4 is a negative 3. So 5 plus negative 3 gives me 2. And that's what YP is. So my point, that's 3/4 the distance from negative 1, uh, 5 to 7, 1, is at the point 5 comma 2. I think that's right. Yes. Did I use those points correctly? Okay. X1, or sorry, Y1, Y2. Okay. All right. Let's see. Make sure I did this right. Y1 is 5 plus 3/4 times Y2, which is 1, minus Y1, which is 5. Y2, yes, minus 1. That's negative 4. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. 5 plus negative 3 is 2. That is correct. All right. Cool. I think we did it right. Okay, so then we do the next one, same thing. Okay, find the 2/3 of the way from C, 6, -5, to point D, 24, 25. Ooh, that's a good one. So your beginning point from C, so 6, comma, -5, to our ending point, which is 24, comma, 25. This one doesn't feel right because that feels like it's graph after that. Mm, I don't know. We'll check that. Okay, your fraction is 2/3. Okay, so want to just make sure we're on there. Example 1 should be 5, comma 2. Yep, nope, I double checked. That's 5, comma 2. That is correct. Okay, so x1 is going to be 6, and x2 is going to be 24. Okay, we know our fraction is 2/3, so xp is what we're looking for. That's going to be my point, equals x1, which is 6, plus our fraction, which is 2/3, times x2, which is 24, minus x1, which is 6. So this gives me 18. 18 times 2/3, okay, is going to be 12. Yes. And then we have 6 plus 12, which gives me 18. And that's YP, right? So 18. So far, so good. Okay. Now we do the next thing with our Y's. Same thing, same process, right? Um, Y1 is -5 and Y2 is 25. All right, make sure you label if you need to. So YP equals Y1, which is -5, plus our fraction of 2/3 times Y2, which is 25, minus Y1, which is -5. Okay, so that's like saying plus 5, 25 plus 5. And that's going to give me 30. So 2/3 times 30, that's what you want to do. Okay. So 2/3 times 30, I believe that gives me 20. All right. 2 times 30 is 60. 60 divided by 3 is 20. So I have -5 plus 20, which gives me -15. Or sorry, positive 15. Positive 15. And that's what YP is. So my point would be at 18, comma 15. Okay. That's the point that's 2/3 the distance between those 2 points. Okay, so this part, obviously, all this stuff is just really labeling and whatnot. Okay, so that's what we want to make sure that we're doing. So if I need a beginning point or end point, so this is kind of like what we did 2 days ago with midpoint. So now this is what we're looking for. So H is 2 -2/3. H is 2/5 of the way from G, which is -4 comma 7, to point J. What are the coordinates of J? So this is the xp yp1, right? That's the midway, that fractional point. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so our beginning point is going to be g, and our ending point is going to be j. And j is what we're going to be looking for. We have our partway point, which is going to be -2 comma 3. Remember, that's like xp yp. Okay, so we have g right here, which is going to be at -2 comma 3, and we have j, which is we don't know. Okay, so um, oh, sorry, that's going to be our x1 y, our x2 y2. Okay, all right, and then you have your partway point there that you can use. Okay, I'll be right back. Well, class is gonna start in 5 minutes. Maybe a bit now. I'm not sure. But next time, I'm trying to get it over. That's okay. No worries. And next time, no, listen, no one should have it. Yeah, I'm here raising my since I'm learning about technology. How do you? Okay. Okay. Oh, I don't have good. I don't have that. No, no, sorry. Sorry about that. So then you just kind of work backwards, right? Looking for what you're missing. Okay, right? Our fractional distance is 2/5, right? Our x1 is going to be -2. Xp, that's what we have, right? That's also -2. And our x2 is what we're looking for. This is going to be our variable, right? That's going to be our unknown. Okay. Ooh, actually, I accidentally wrote that wrong. That should be -4, right? I wrote those coordinates wrong for g. It should be -4 comma 7. Sorry about that, guys. So now we work backwards, right? Xp is -2 equals x1, which is -4, plus our fraction, which is 2/5, times x2 minus x1. So x2, we don't know, so we'll leave that as our variable, minus x1, which is -4. So since it's -4, we're going to change that to a +4 because it's plus minus -4. We change that to a +4, right? Okay, so best thing is to add this 4 to both sides. You have 2 equals 2/5 times x2 plus 4. Okay. Now you can distribute if you want, and you can get the same answer, or you can multiply by that reciprocal, and that's multiplying by 5/2 on both sides. To me, that makes life so much simpler. Okay, and we'll talk more about that as it goes. Or you can distribute. Okay, and you'll get the same answer. But 5/2 times 2, guess what? That's 5. So 5 is equal to x2 plus 4. We subtract 4 from both sides, and guess what? X2 equals 1. Okay? So that's the easy part there, right? So now we have the y form, the x. Now we just do the same process for the y values. Okay? And yes, I would multiply by the reciprocal if I were you. Okay, so y1 is 7, uh, yp is 3, and y2 is what we don't know. That's the unknown. So that's going to be our variable. Okay. So we're going to say 3 equals y1, which is 7, plus our fraction of 2/5 times y2, which we don't know. So we'll leave as our variable, minus y1, which is 7. So remember, I did +4 because I did a change on that one. This one is not a -7, so I'm going to keep it as -7. Okay. So I'm going to subtract 7 to both sides. That's going to give me -4 equals 2/5 times, right? Times y2 minus 7. Okay, I'm doing this on purpose because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. That means you take that fraction and you turn it the opposite way. You flip it. And these will cancel out each other. Makes life really simple. Okay. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. Negative 20 divided by 2 is negative 10. So we have negative 10 equals y2 minus 7. And then we add 7 to both sides, and y2 equals 3. Yay! So J is actually at the coordinates 1, comma 3. And those are our coordinates for J, 1, comma 3. Okay? Negative 4, 7. Negative 2, 3. Making sure I did all this right. Okay. All right. We shall see. Okay. All right. And then last one's kind of the midpoint. M is the halfway point. All you're doing is finding a midpoint formula, right? Because the fraction is 1/2. All right. Thank you very much.